We've already borrowed more money than we can possibly repay. We can barely pay the interest. The only reason we can pay the interest is because the rates are so low.
We have conditions today that are different than they were throughout 5,000 years of history, because we have a world fiat currency and zero rates of interest.
That's what a Ponzi scheme is all about. In other words, the loans can't possibly be paid back, so the solution is to double, triple, quadruple the amount of loans in the system to get the fees on those loans.
The crime that is being committed today is that the credit comes out of thin air.
Question: what is money? Money is a non-existent theoretical force that has never, does not, and will never exist except in theory on computer screens.
Now that we have fiat money, or a money substitute, the Fed can create money out of thin air.
How is money created? There's another big question. Oh, it's governments. No! It's private banks lending non-existent money called credit.
We started this experiment where all the world's currencies would be fiat currencies simultaneously in 1971.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
The dollar would no longer be pegged to gold. It formerly became a fiat currency.
And then Reagan says, deficits don't matter. We can just go ahead and spend as much as we want. And the debt increases.
In 1974, we joined what they called the Bank of International Settlement in Basel in Switzerland, which is a group of private European bankers. Since 1974, the Bank of Canada has been taking its marching orders from these private bankers who meet in secret, and we don't know what they talk about. And since 1974, we've run debts every year. And since 1974, we have paid $1.1 trillion in compounded interest to private bankers.
They're at a point now where debt is so overwhelming that they realize it can't be paid. There's no way that it's going to be paid.
So if you look at these banks in the UK, like HSBC, Lloyds, Barclays, Royal Bank of Scotland, they have more debts on their books than they could ever possibly pay back in 100 years. And technically, they're insolvent.
Is there ever any true expectation that the debt can be paid in full?
Not a realistic one.
There have been thousands upon thousands upon thousands of fiat currencies throughout history, and there isn't one that survived. It is a 100% failure rate.
If you study monetary history throughout thousands of years, you will find out that paper money has been tried many, many times, and it never succeeds. It always ends badly. The question is, when will the dollar end badly?
The reason we have inflation in the United States, or for that matter anywhere in the world, is because these pieces of paper and the accompanying book entries, or their counterparts in other nations, are growing more rapidly than the quantity of goods and services produced.
And if you expand the currency supply, prices like a sponge in water have to rise to suck up the excess currency. It's the currency going down, not prices going up.
What happened to all that noise? That's what would happen to inflation if we stopped letting the amount of money grow so rapidly.
In the old days, you say, we'll earn 3 or 4%, you know, put it in the savings account. That's not available to anybody.
Why doesn't the Fed raise interest rates? Because they can't. What if we have $1 trillion interest payment on the national debt? That's half our tax revenue. I mean, where are we going to get that money?
don't think of the Federal Reserve as private. We think of it as an arm of that government.
No, it's not. People have shares in that bank. It's like the Bank of Montreal or the TD Bank. It's a private bank. It's huge, but it's a private bank.
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
The Bank of England is a private bank, so all the European banks are private. So you have foreign private bankers dictating to a public civil servant and Minister of Justice.
Do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge?
The governments don't rule the world. Goldman Sachs rules the world.
The Federal Reserve simply created $800 billion, interest-free, and bailed out the banks. We here, through the Bank of Canada, gave three banks $60 billion and secretly assumed their toxic debt of $160 billion through the defaulted CHMC mortgages.
So who got the money?
To financial institutions in Europe and other countries.
Which ones?
I don't know.
$500 billion and you don't know who got the money?
And who got the money?
Hundreds and hundreds of banks. Any bank or that has access to the U.S. Federal Reserve's discount.
Tell us who they are.
No.